Hi again, everybody. Now we're going to actually talk about any types of medical leave, paid or unpaid leave that you may be entitled to for needing to miss work due to a sickness, a injury, or even sometimes to take care of a family member or to address a birth or adoption of a child. This is primarily covered under a federal law called FMLA, or the Family Medical Leave Act. Now remember, employers are still free to provide additional rights beyond FMLA on their own. We encourage employers to do that, obviously. So you should first begin by going to your employer's either handbook or policies, union agreement if you're in a union shop, and letting them know that you're curious as to what they may provide internally for any types of paid or unpaid medical leave that could be available to you, in addition to potential short-term or long-term disability policies that your employer may have, usually through private insurers like an AFLAC or something like that. But all those things aside, the Family Medical Leave Act is a federal law that provides for up to 12 weeks of unpaid leave. And there's some thresholds or prerequisites for you to first follow or know that you need before you get that coverage. Number one is you need to be employed with your employer for a year or more. There's usually a numerical threshold of hours that you can also meet that looks to be about what a full-time employee would be at a year. And your employer needs to have 50 or more employees. Now you're allowed to group all your employer's offices or satellite locations within a 75-mile radius to get to that 50. But if you don't get to that 50 or haven't been there for a year or the requisite number of hours, unfortunately the FMLA rights may not apply to you. Now, if you do meet those criteria, you should know that FMLA covers various conditions, but the conditions usually need to be pretty serious. You actually have to be under a doctor's care or have incapacitation issues. Low-level sicknesses that don't need you to go to the doctor kind of might fall between the cracks of FMLA protection. And I'll talk about those issues in a second. But you should also know that in addition to the 12 weeks unpaid leave provided by FMLA, you can also take this as an intermittent type of leave, where you wouldn't need to miss days, or whole weeks for these conditions. You can sometimes do it for just a specific doctor's appointment. This intermittent leave provides up to, details down to the hour sometimes of the amount of leave that you might be able to avail yourself with. You should also know regarding FMLA that it's really our only main law that can cover birth, death, adoption, and other types of leave that unfortunately many other industrialized nations provide for their citizens. This is a little different. We would need not only FMLA to apply to those folks, but you should also know that specifically it goes up to 26 weeks if the injury involved is related to a service member of the United States military or one of its branches. You should know also, though, that if you avail yourself of that right, you can only use that for one household or one service member kind of per household, even if there's more than one service member in your household. You can take it for recuperating from a serious health condition, to care for a family member with a serious health condition, especially if you're the primary caregiver, to bond with a child, to handle qualifying exigencies arising out of the family member's military service. And you should know that you can also make sure that you provide the most medical documentation as you can tied to the doctor's requirement that you be under their care or otherwise have this serious health condition. It sometimes results in an employer wanting an independent medical evaluation or to send you to one of their doctors. The last thing I'm going to talk about tied to medical leave is the fact that the state of Michigan, fortunately, just in March of 2019, actually passed a paid sick leave law. Now, this sick leave law was product of a lot of great groups going in and lobbying and getting Lansing to kind of do the right thing. And unfortunately, the thresholds that I just mentioned cover FMLA also cover this law for the most part. You need your 50 employees or more, just like FMLA. You also should know that it would still cover you under if you're a temp worker or even a part-time worker, but it usually requires you to be there for at least 90 days after the start of your employment before this law kind of kicks in. And it accrues 1 hour of paid leave for every 35 hours worked. So pretty much an hour a week at your regular full-time rate. And it protects you if you need to use this time for the various conditions we've talked about. Luckily, many of which would fall short of that incapacitation or that serious medical condition issue that I mentioned earlier, for going to seek medical treatment, for just being sick but not necessarily incapacitated. All of those lesser degree types of potential illnesses would potentially be covered by this law. The last few things that I'll say about that is it doesn't apply to government employees. It actually would require you to make sure that after a year it kind of resets. So it's only up to 40 hours of total sick time, or roughly 1 week, per 12-month period. So it's not something that's able to roll over or otherwise accrue beyond that 12-month period. And if you have any questions tied to whether FMLA covers you, Michigan's paid sick time law covers you, whether or not you've been retaliated against for filing FMLA or for asking for FMLA paperwork, or going to any government agency for that matter to try to find out about your rights, please contact Sugar Law again, 313-993-4505 or www.sugarlaw.org. Thank you.